Hi, this is Eric Bischoff, and you're listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
You are listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Well, we are live, pals, and welcome to another edition of the Bill Apter Steeler Approved Count It Out with Mike and Tyler. My name is Tyler, and I am joined by the one and only Mike. Mike, what's going on, brother?
Well, when it all comes crashing down, my friend, and it hurts inside, we do a Hulk Hogan tribute show.
Yeah, this is obviously incredibly sad. Hulk Hogan passing away at the age of 71 years old. I think it's safe to say
Cardiac
probably.
arrest, right?
That's what they're
That's what I
saying.
read. Yeah.
Cardiac arrest. I think it's probably due to complications from that incredibly huge neck procedure that he got done, if I had to
Oh,
take a
okay.
guess.
Yeah.
I think it all would all tie in together.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say, without a shadow of a doubt, Hulk Hogan is probably the most important professional wrestler of all time.
And you can't take that away from him. We're not going to harp on any negativity on this episode. We're going to focus on Hulk Hogan, the character, and his impact on professional wrestling. And I don't care what anybody here has to say about Terry Bollea and his actions outside of the ring. Nobody, nobody can take away his contributions and the fact that he is the most pivotal and influential and important catalyst to the success of WWF. Second, maybe only to Vince McMahon himself. Maybe.
Yeah,
Like
that's.
him and Vince are probably neck and neck.
I mean, that's like, to me, when everyone always asks that Hogan and Vince question, it's always like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like,
Exactly.
you
There's
can't
no
do
right
one
answer
without
to
the
that.
other.
I don't think you have WWF without those two together. And we're going to talk about that a little later on my list. I have some notes to talk about his transition from the AWA to the WWF and how important that was to the landscape of professional wrestling, because it happened at the same time that Vince McMahon bought the company from his father. And, you know, Vince buying the company and then in come Hogan, the rest is history. And I mean that in the most literal sense. Now we look back at the last 45 years of professional wrestling, and it wouldn't happen without without Hogan and Vince getting together. And I mean that in every sense. All the people who don't enjoy the WWE product, that's fine with me. Like you can hate WWE all you want. You can love your your AEW, you can love your TNA, but you still don't get those things without the influence of WWF and Hulk Hogan. You know,
Absolutely.
it's just it's science at this point.
This is a question I've been asking a couple people that I talked to throughout the week about this, and I'll ask it to you. If it wasn't Hulk Hogan in 1984,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anybody that could have made it work. Like, if
we
you
we
look at
all, we
the
always ask these questions like
look,
who you know who would have been if it's not this person. You just don't get here
like
without
look at the landscape of professional wrestling in 1984, and I'll let you go company wide, worldwide.
Mhm.
There's nobody that makes that run that Hogan had. You know,
Absolutely not. I mean,
Dusty Rhodes is a name
you're
that's
you're two
always.
your two biggest stars in the world, and I mean globally, not just WWF. Your two biggest stars in the world, probably, and let's go all the way back to 1980, 81. Okay, who are your biggest stars? Bob Backlund and Nick Bockwinkel.
Yeah, Bruno would probably still be
Bruno
considered a big
Bruno Bruno
star.
Bruno's fading out though at that time.
And then Yvonne Eriks. Yvonne Eriks,
Andre's still probably the hottest babyface in the world, but
yeah.
even he's starting to wind down. You
Yeah.
know, uh, you at this point they needed a superstar, and you didn't have a superstar. You had steady hands that carried the business, that loved the business, that were the business, but you didn't have anybody that broke the mold.
Well, and if you take a look
Hulk
at
Hogan
some,
broke the mold.
well, yeah, take a look at some of those stars back then. Ric Flair. I mean, Ric Flair was amazing, but he wasn't going to be like he didn't have the physique, let's say, that would have made him that superstar.
No,
Like,
no.
and Flair's
Who did though? Like Billy Graham, maybe?
Billy
Like
Graham. Billy Graham was born 10 years. Like he was born too soon. Billy
yeah.
Graham, I think, and he could have maybe done that spot, but his body would have fallen
Well,
apart.
well, let's be honest.
Dusty
Hulk
Rhodes would
Hogan was
probably
Billy
be
Graham.
Dusty Rhodes probably would have been the closest to get it done.
Dusty had the charisma. Dusty had
But he was
everything,
but
but he
I
didn't
don't
have that.
I don't think Dusty would have had the worldwide appeal. Like Dusty was very southern based. You know what I mean? Like he had like that he just seemed more of like a southern like Atlanta type of guy.
I do have a name, and I don't know if I still mean this, but this is something I meant when I was younger. I do think that Magnum would have taken the reins at one point too,
I think
if it wasn't
Magnum
for
would have
his.
been I think he would have been a top NWA star, but I don't think he would have had the same
He
appeal that
wouldn't. You don't
Hogan
think he would have
had.
had that global reach?
He
I
didn't have
think he
that
would have.
he didn't have that charisma. Like he
I
had a
I
different type of charisma, you know what
I
I
could
mean?
I could have seen him doing the same things that Hogan did though, like his the movie deals and all that,
Yeah.
because he had the look. Women loved him. Men wanted to be him. He like he was the antithesis of like everything that a professional wrestler should have been. He never reached. We'll never know if he could have reached the Hulk Hogan levels, but
Well,
just
by
the Mark side of me wishes
by the
I think
time
he
that
could have.
by the time he got in his car accident too, like Hulkamania was
Mhm.
already running wild, and I
Yeah.
don't and Magnum didn't get there, right? And the Von
Well,
Erichs would be my last kind of
well,
look too, but I
well, the
again
Von Erichs,
they were
how
very regional, right?
the fact that Kerry could have should have been level, but
David was the one
you know,
everyone pinned as a star, right?
yeah, Kerry was the talent. I don't know.
So, but yeah,
I,
just
before we move on from this conversation, I have one more name I want to bring up. Um, Not because I think the man could have been at this level. I want to know why he didn't reach this level because he had everything. Why do you think Jesse Ventura? Why do you think Jesse Ventura wasn't the Hulk Hogan of his era?
I don't think he could work good enough.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Like Jesse had the charisma and the look.
Damn right he did.
But yeah, I don't. It wasn't there when the bell rang, and everyone
Mhm.
always is like, "Oh, well, Hulk Hogan wasn't a good worker." Hey, man, Hogan wasn't a bad worker at all. Hogan got it.
Hogan, you look at some of his AWA stuff and the stuff that he was doing in Japan, he could go.
You look at his W.
Hogan and McMahon were smart enough to know that he didn't have to work like that.
The Hulk Hogan match formula is genius.
Mhm.
Come in, rip the shirt, hit the couple poses, shine for a few minutes, get cut
Yep.
off, sell, Hulk
It
up, big
it
boot, leg
it
drop,
worked
Hogan
for
must
20
pose.
years.
It still works to this day, Mike.
We discussed it. We discussed this with Goldberg too. You don't fuck with a formula when it's working. You
But
know,
that
in
formula still works to this day.
yeah,
Like there are people that still do variations of Hulk up spots, and
for
it's
sure.
still and it will work until wrestling is no more. It's such a great.
I mean, I'm sure he would never admit that he took this formula from Hogan, but there's another massive superstar who was the biggest name in professional wrestling for a hot minute that I think took that formula as well, and that was the Ultimate Warrior. Warrior very much had that same formula, the go in, you know, do your thing, get out kind of thing. And it worked for Warrior for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Him and Hogan had some great memories together. What I want to do throughout the show as well, and I'm going to start with the first one right here, is I just went through our archives and I grabbed a couple comments from some people talking about Hulk Hogan. I'm going to start with a recent one here. It's a good friend of the show, B. Brian Blair, who was incredibly close with Hogan. We saw him on TV for the tribute shows,
Yeah, it
and
was
it's
nice to see Brian on there, eh?
and it's going to I pulled a clip of him talking about having Hulk Hogan's first match. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in now, and then we're going to continue talking about some of our Hulk Hogan memories. So, Brian, you're not the only famous name to be trained by Hiro Matsuda as well. Of course, Hulk Hogan famously trained by him. He had his leg broken in training. Were you around Hiro still at that time when that incident happened? And what do you remember hearing about that, or even the first time you heard about Hulk?
No, well, Terry and I have been friends since before the business, and today he's still one of my best friends in the whole world. Um, Terry called me every day I was in the hospital, every single day, to motivate me. And I'm sorry about that dog barking.
That's okay.
But
We
anyway,
we have animal run-ins every week on our show. Two cats and a
count
dog for me over
it out,
here.
man. You're
Count
not
it
counting
out.
out. You're gonna
It's
be big.
crazy over here.
I'm gonna send the dogs after you. So, but during I started training in high school, just out of high school during the summertime, and going to play football at the University of Louisville. Well, actually, my first year I had to go to St. Leo College. That's another story, but because Tampa U folded football. Um, but the 3 summers that I trained, 3 people stayed. Many people came. That Dan Spivey came. Uh, uh, Razor Ramon came. A lot of guys, but everybody quit. Lots of guys came. They all quit except for Hulk Hogan and Paul Orndorff. And Paul Orndorff graduated the summer before I came. So, um, and then Terry and I graduated. In other words, we went on to pro wrestling from getting stretched the same summer. But I was like 6 weeks ahead of him. Then he had his first match with me in Chiefland, Florida, in June of '77.
Is that special for you, knowing like with the friendship that you guys had before the business and how you're friends so many years later that you got to have his first match?
It is special. It is very special. And because he's a special person. We're all the same. I mean, nobody's better than anybody else. We're all people, but Terry, you have to respect him for his accomplishments, which are numerous, and he just doesn't stop. I mean, I just talked to him. He's got so much stuff going on. It is just unbelievable. He's got an amateur wrestling league going. He's got a restaurant chain going. He's got
But
a
the
whole
beer,
The beer, yeah.
yeah, the real
beer.
American beer.
Hogan's Real American Beer. Yes.
For any of our younger listeners that are listening, Brian, can you try to describe what Hulkamania was like in that boom period in the mid 80s there? Because I don't think, it's like how Stone Cold was for the Attitude Era, but totally different. Like, can you try to put into words for those younger listeners the experience of Hulkamania?
Well, Hulkamania is what everybody's riding on right now, in my opinion. If it wasn't for Hulk Hogan and the combination of Hulk and Vince in WrestleMania 1, uh, we would have never made the living that we made, and the guys today wouldn't be making the money they made. When I broke in, they always taught us to respect those that pave the way for you, and I always have and always will, and a lot of the new guys do. Some of them are very cocky, but for the most part, they're very good. But Hulkamania was unbelievable when Terry did the Rocky movie, and he was Thunderlips.
Thunderlips.
And, that really kind of kicked things off for him big time. And when he would talk, his promos, say your prayers and take your vitamins, and the little Hulkamaniacs, he just really connected with the kids, and the adults liked him because he was that pure baby face with a gimmick, if you will. It was like kind of like Dusty Rhodes and superstar Billy Graham, um, with a great body, charisma, and wrestling skill. A lot of people don't realize it, but Hulkster can get down and he can do chain wrestling. I mean, I've done it with him. I know. I mean, that's just not his gimmick, but and he knows how to handle himself, as Vern Gagne found out when he shot on Hulkster. And he knew shouldn't be. But when he broke his leg, that happened after they put him in a mask and he was the super destroyer. And he knew he wasn't going anywhere fast. I mean, they were just kind of, they didn't know what to do with him. So he left and went to Pensacola, a couple other places, and decided to come back. And that's when he got with Matsuda, and I was in Oklahoma at the time. And apparently, Matsuda broke his ankle or his leg, his lower leg by his ankle.
You know, you got to feel bad for these guys like Brian and Jimmy Hart, especially. I feel like it was so heart-wrenching watching Jimmy cry during these 10 bell salutes.
Jimmy, I think Hogan had a lot of acquaintances, a lot of business partners, business friends, work friends. Jimmy wasn't a work friend, and I think that was very apparent in interviews and things like that over the last 20 years. But seeing him on television, it just all came out that he deeply cared about Hogan. You could see that.
I think for people that are closer to our age, Mike, in our early to mid 40s, late 40s for you, early 50s for you, but I think people that were born, in the late 80s, maybe the mid to late 80s, right when Hulkamania was really bumping, and we grew up like with Hulk Hogan.
Yes, we did.
For me, like
I'm gonna guess Hogan was. What year were you born?
I was born in '84.
Okay, so Hogan was champ when you were. So
Hulk Hogan.
Backlund was champ when I was born.
That's because
So
you're
you were,
old.
but yeah, that's very true. You were born into Hulkamania.
Hulkamania was running wild for about 6 months before I was born. He beat
Mhm.
the Iron Sheik. But what I was going to say there is Hulk Hogan's passing. It's very sad when anybody passes, obviously. But for me
Yeah.
personally, like it's really opened up a floodgates of childhood fondness and memories for me.
Yes.
I really like think back to memories that I cherish with my great grandparents who were incredibly, like I was incredibly close with them, and I'd be at their house every weekend. And my grandmother would take me to the store and we would rent probably 5 wrestling VHSs. And my
Hmm.
great grandfather's the one who got me into wrestling, and I would sit there and we would watch all the wrestling, and it was Hogan, man. Like I was hooked on Hogan. He was my
Yeah.
guy. I remember watching WrestleMania 4's tournament and vividly watching that, and WrestleMania 1 and all the Survivor series. Like I watched all of those at my great grandparents' house, and it was all Hulk Hogan. So just like it almost like it was like an out of body experience for me just to go back and start reliving these memories, thinking of Hulk Hogan's passing. And it's almost like I got to cherish his memories again as I thought about Hogan's passing. And that was
Hmm.
that was really nice for me personally.
That's I have a very different background on that because I didn't grow up a Hulkamaniac. I didn't, you know, it wasn't until my adult years, due to other reasons that I didn't like the guy so much. But I didn't hate the character growing up, but I wasn't that guy. He wasn't my guy. All I think I was just trying to be different, probably, because all my friends loved Hogan, and or Hogan or Warrior, where I was a Roddy guy. I loved Roddy Piper.
Uh-huh.
Everything Roddy Piper did. So I had to, had to cheer for my boy Roddy at all times. And if that meant just like later on in my life when I became an Owen Hart guy, if I liked Owen Hart, that meant I had to boo. I had to boo Bret Hart. Well, same thing here. I was a Roddy guy. That means I have to boo Hulk Hogan. And I'll never forget WrestleMania 6. Um, by the time I watched it, it was on VHS, so it was probably. I mean, you remember how long it took for VHSs to come out back in the
Oh
day.
yeah, it's like almost a
So,
year later.
so by the time I watched WrestleMania 6, it was probably right before WrestleMania 7. But I remember sitting in my friend's basement watching WrestleMania 6, and we're watching the main event, and my friend and his two brothers are marking out so hard for that main event. Two of them are Hogan fans. One of them's a Warrior fan. The one Warrior fan, he's got the face paint and everything. We're just watching on VHS, but they're going hardcore, the face paint and everything. And I'm like, Can we go back and rewatch the Roddy bad news match?
That match has been erased from the history of time.
It
Sorry,
has. It
sorry, guys.
has. Thankfully, it's not a great match, so we're not missing anything. But it was hard for me because, you when you were a kid, you had to choose a side between Hogan and Warrior, where I was like, okay. Now, growing up, I learned to respect that match. I learned to understand what that match is supposed to be, and I actually do love that main event.
It's great. It's one
Um,
of the best main events. To
I
me, to me,
I
like
underappreciated it for a long time.
to me, whenever anybody asks me like, what do you think a WrestleMania main event should be? I always point to that match because that is a match where you literally took your two biggest stars in the company
Yeah.
and you put them in the match at your biggest show that you do, and
Mhm.
nobody knew who was gonna win because it was
Yeah.
just such a like battle. And then like to me, that's what I like.
And it was great because you watching a pay-per-view for WWF, especially WrestleMania, you got matches like that. You watch Superstars on Saturday mornings, and you're watching Sid Justice destroy Dale Wolf. You know what I
Hey,
mean?
you don't besmirch the good name of Dale Wolf on this show.
I don't know if he's alive, but I would get him on the show tomorrow. I love me some Dale. He's probably my favorite enhancement talent ever. Um, just because during the build, because as everybody knows, one of my favorite eras of wrestling is that '92 era between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. That stuff with Sid and the when he was putting people on stretchers every week. It seemed like every other week it was Dale Wolf. That just burned in my mind. But what I'm saying is on television, you knew who was going to win every week because it was always a big star versus an enhancement talent. Then you got to their pay-per-views. Then the guessing game started. You couldn't guess who would win between Hulk Hogan and Warrior. And if you
Oh.
did guess, $10 said you didn't guess Warrior.
Back then, you couldn't guess who was going to win between Sergeant Slaughter and the Berserker. That's how
Right.
crazy Superstars was.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to try to explain to this generation just how big Hulkamania was as well. And I'm going to play a clip here from our good friend Uncle Bill Apter in a minute because
Yeah.
we had this really cool conversation with Bill where I asked him if he could try to explain the differences
Mm-hmm.
between Bruno, Hogan, Austin, and Cena with crowd reactions because I think that they're all very important because they all were the faces of the company. To me, they're the Mount Rushmore of the WWE is
Yes.
Bruno, Hogan, Cena, and Austin. I think they're the biggest stars in company history.
Yeah.
But Hulkamania was crazy in 1984, man. Hogan came off being in Thunder Lips in the Rocky 3 movie, and it changed everything for him. And that was something that Vince McMahon Sr. told him, no, you can't do that.
Right.
That's how Hogan's first run in New York ended because he
Mm-hmm.
chose to do Rocky over and
Exactly.
then he went to the AWA where I'm gonna play the Greg Gagne clip. Maybe I'll do them back to back here. I'll do this one back to back because they kind of go hand in hand.
But before you play that, I want to preface with one thing. Number one, this after clip is one of my favorite conversations we've ever had on this show. I absolutely love everything about that conversation with After. If you haven't heard that interview, please go back in your archives. It's probably one of the most important interviews we've ever done. It really set up everything we do here at Count It Out. But also, I have a question for you when we're talking about the difference between these four. I don't think Cena or Bruno touch Hogan when it comes to the crowd reactions and stuff like that. But Austin, do you think Austin may have surpassed Hogan for a brief period of time?
I think Austin is the biggest star in WWE history.
Mm-hmm.
But it was
I
different
agree
though.
with you.
But his pops were different than Hogan's, and Bill kind of breaks it down a little bit
And
more.
they're both the two men who are responsible for two very different boom periods in wrestling.
The only two
Where,
boom periods in wrestling.
well, that's just going to say where the other two, Bruno and Cena, don't really have that moniker. Where they did good for their business when they were there, but it's not like they created something, created a like a boom period like
Mhm.
Hogan or Austin did.
Like Bruno's boom period was different. Bruno didn't take it to mainstream, but he made it very successful.
Yeah,
Cena just steered the ship. That was
exactly.
already
Cena took it and did. He didn't sink it. You know what I mean? He
well,
didn't. I
Cena
hate to say
Cena
this, but he didn't Shawn Michaels the thing. You
yeah.
know, he didn't.
Cena
He took it. He was successful, but he didn't hit those Hogan Austin levels.
Cena has Cena has had the longest run on top by far of anybody. It's very impressive, but
Yes.
again, we say without Hogan, it all comes back to Hogan and just trying to put Hulkamania into perspective. Like we look back now, and I know a lot of people kind of laugh at like hulking up and some of his promos and stuff. But back in the 80s, this was
It was
all
huge. It
crazy
was
stuff, and
massive.
people would lose their mind when Eye of the Tiger would hit and that arena would start buzzing.
Hmm.
Like you go back and try to find on YouTube some of those like original entrance clips of Eye of the Tiger playing and Hogan making his entrance. Like these places come unglued, but it was everywhere. He did big business everywhere. So I think this is a good time. Let's start
Yeah.
with
Throw to those
we'll
clips.
start with Bill Apter first because I kind of ties into exactly what we're talking about, and then we kind of hear Greg Gagne. Greg's take is a little different on Hogan because Hogan burned the AWA pretty good,
Yeah.
and he talks about it. I'm not going to shy away from it
No.
because Hogan never shied away from it either. But
Exactly.
Hulkamania was born in the AWA, like that's where
100%.
he and Greg Gagne kind of talks about that. So I'm going to let Greg in respect to Greg as well, I'm going to let him air his full opinions on the
Yes.
Hogan matter, and we're going to air that, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do our first of two list.
Very good.
You've been in the industry and you've come through what I like to consider the Mount Rushmore of the WWF, WWF, and WWE. The big face of the company have always been Bruno Sammartino, and then it went into Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania, into Austin 316, and then finally with John Cena has kind of been the last.
Well, we got to put Bret Hart on that.
Bret Hart, of course, we're the Canadians in us.
That's right.
Can you kind of explain the different atmospheres each guy that I just kind of named there brought to the arenas? You got a different pop from Hulk Hogan and a different energy to Austin to
No, I get it. So Bruno brought the air of legit wrestler. Okay, who was the second guy?
Hogan.
Hogan brought the air of Hulkamania, brother. What you going to do? He brought the air of showmanship into the WWF like no one else ever had.
And then so like inside Madison Square Garden, how different was the energy when compared to Bruno to Hogan?
Two different. It was the same type of energy, but it was a different type of fan.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does.
With Hogan had theme music. Bruno didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So fans would start with Bruno, the anticipation before he came out. When they knew he was going to come out, the chants of Bruno were what I Am an All-American became, a Real American became for Hulk Hogan's entrance.
That's cool. I get goosebumps just thinking about that. That's really cool.
And
then Steve Austin would be, when that glass breaks, it's a different type of energy.
Different type of thing. You had a tougher crowd. You had people flipping the bird and cursing when he came out.
Yeah.
But it was all in fun. And then with John Cena. Yeah, with John Cena, it was a different type of thing because you had fans who loved him and for some reason hated him, and they would cheer and boo at the same time. That never happened with the other three guys.
It's different energy, different eras. I
Great
like
question, by the way.
And thank you. Yeah. And you got to experience all that.
Well, I wrestled it. This was a funny story. I wrestled in New York, and they had me on the second or third match with Johnny Rods. And we went out there for about 14, 15 minutes and tore the place apart. I mean, people were standing. And when I came out, Vince Sr. was there. And he looked at me, he said, "What was that?" And I said, "Well, that was wrestling." He said, "But how are my guys going to follow it?" And I said, "Well, that's their freaking problem, you know." So Hulk was on the card that night. It would mechanically in the ring, he wasn't very good. And we talked a little bit afterwards, and I said, "Well, why don't you come into the AWA? You need a lot of work. We'll help you out." You got a lot of potential. So I went back home and I told my dad, I said, hey, this guy, Hulk Hogan, we should bring him in here. He said, well, what's he like? I said, well, he's big and, he's wrestling as a heel there. And I said, he didn't do a very good interview, what I heard. So he needs some help there and he needs some ring help. He said, okay. And I told Hulk, call my dad. Finally, 3 months later, he finally called him. And he came in and we were wrestling in Milwaukee. And they put Johnny Valiant with him because Johnny could do a good interview and was his manager. And Milwaukee, we were sold out that night. And I came back and he said, well, how'd it go? And I said, well, he's a babyface, man. The people love him. He's got that look. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm telling you, they cheered him. He said, well, I said, he's really, he needs a lot of work in the ring. So they did. They put Jim and I with them with 6-man tag team matches. So he could get the flow on that. We would, we'd get an arm on him and we'd tag him out and say, grab the arm, twist it, boom, drop a leg, tag out. And we had him look really good all the time in the match. And then Vern helped him with his interviews. And the Hulkamania thing started there. And we were at the Rosemont Horizon. And we were wrestling Bockwinkel, Stevens, and Jerry Blackwell with Bobby Heenan and their partner. And it was Hulk and Jim and I. And it was sold out. And we hit the ring and Hulk did his pose. He had the T-shirt on. And I told Jim to grab the T-shirt. We each grabbed a side and we tore it off real slow. And those people just went through the ceiling. And by that time, he was really catching on. And, he got guys like Bockwinkel and Stevens and Blackwell, beating him, really. And everybody making him look like the Hulk. And, that's where he really got it all. Vern helped me with his interviews. And then he said, when you're coming back on somebody, just start shaking and show that fire. You got to show some fire. So he taught him that. We taught him, timing in the ring and when to do something, when not to, and how to do it. And then the rest is history. McMahon offered him a deal. We had our battle royals. We ran those usually in October. In the November, the winners would meet the champion. And we were in Phoenix. And it was the last one. And Andre was there. And Andre and Hulk were going to Japan. And when he got on the plane, Vince was there. And when he came back, we had Christmas week, we had all our major cities, 6 of them. They were all sold out. And it was mostly 6-man tag team matches with Jim and I. Hulk had wrestled Bockwinkel. He'd won the St. Paul Battle Royal, wrestled Bockwinkel in November. And didn't win the belt. So then, so CBS came to us while Hogan was in Japan, and they said we would like to do a Saturday night 2-hour special, but we want a match with Bockwinkel and Hogan. And this was prior to Hogan leaving. Before we got to December, when everything was sold out, we had to sign, him and I, a non-disclosure that we wouldn't tell anybody about. They wanted to do a big promotion on the thing. They didn't want anybody to know about it. So Hogan goes to Japan. He comes back Christmas Day. We show up, sold out, no Hogan. And I call him at home. I said, hey, what are you doing? Well, I signed a deal with Vince. I'm going to New York. I said, well, Hunk, you don't do business like that. Finish your commitment, and then we don't have any problem letting you go. But you can't just not show up. I mean, we got, St. Paul, we got Winnipeg, Denver, Chicago, Milwaukee, everything sold out. So he didn't show. And that went all the way through Christmas week. And then the next thing we see him in January, he's in New York. And then Vince targeted the AWA because of the talent we had.
Absolutely.
and the money we were drawing, it was phenomenal what we were doing. And Hulk told me, he said, "Well, Vince is paying me more not to show up." I said, "You don't even know what you're going to make on this. Everything's sold out." He probably would have made, I don't know, 20, 30 grand. And I know Vince wasn't paying him that much. But he had signed the deal. So that was, the rest is history.
So yeah, some nice stuff there. Very interesting to hear Hogan, how he shaped his way kind of in the AWA. And yeah, I don't know. It's just pretty cool. And another guy maybe I'm going to do my list first, and then I'm going to throw two comments from Dory Funk Jr. and Kurt Angle as well, because they both have some good stuff. And then we'll close it out before your list with Jacques Rougeau. But we're going to do two lists today. The first one I'm going to do is the top 7 Hulk Hogan career moments. And then, Mike, you're going to count down right after that the top 7 Hulk Hogan rivals of all time. We figured with Hogan, it's such a big deal. He was such a big deal. He deserves 2 lists, much like he deserved 3 10-bell salutes in the WWE.
100%. Anybody who had a problem with that, shut up.
Yeah.
It was 30 seconds out of your life. Stop it.
You're fine. The guy, and again, we're celebrating Hulk Hogan, the wrestler, today. I'm not going to harp. This is the only thing I'm going to say outside of this. I didn't always agree. I will say I didn't always agree. I never agreed with Terry Bollea, the decisions that he made in his own life. But Hulk Hogan is always going to be a hero of mine.
It's the same thing when the day comes when we have to do a show like this for a person like Vince McMahon. Are we going to harp on his real life controversies?
We'll talk about it.
Well, sure. But what we have to focus on is the fact that without that man, we're not here. No. We don't get to talk about our love for professional wrestling because he is responsible for our love for professional wrestling. And that's what we're talking about today. Hulk Hogan is responsible for every fan. Now, the modern day fans didn't grow up with Hogan, so maybe, they're not directly, Hogan's not directly responsible for the new fans, but guess what? He's responsible for the people who made you fans.
Mm-hmm.
If you're growing up idolizing Seth Rollins, guess who Seth Rollins grew up idolizing?
Yeah.
Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I do think it's important that we just, that it's mentioned. I don't want to harp on it, but I think it's important that, it is mentioned.
I had little to no respect for the acts of Terry Bollea. And I'm not going to shy away from that because I've talked about this on the show before. So I'm not going to change my tune now just because he's dead. However, we're not here to talk about Terry Bollea. The legacy of the character Hulk Hogan deserves to be tributed.
Absolutely, it does. And we're going to start doing that right now with the top 7 Hulk Hogan career moments. Now, this list was difficult to do.
Was it though? I'm interested in this because I shied away from this list. When I decided, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a list. That's the first list I crossed off my list because I said it's probably too predictable.
It is.
I thought of 7 things off the top of my head right away and been like, okay, well, there's my list. There's no wild cards. There's no, anybody could just snap these off. So I shied away. So I'm really interested in because you have a good way of pulling deep cuts and finding things that I wouldn't have thought of. So I'm really interested in seeing what you're going to do with this list that I may not have.
I found this list actually difficult because Hogan had a lot of great moments, but outside of my top 4, he didn't have a lot of iconic moments, if that makes sense. And I use the word iconic.
And see if I agree with you. Okay.
So,
because I can think of 15 iconic moments that involved Hulk Hogan.
I mean, iconic is a strong word, right? The top 4 for me changed the business. Everything about it, and the rest of them were just kind of fun moments. But the top 4 were the huge ones. But I went with a deep cut for my number seven. And
Sure.
this is one that, and I'm going to pull a you on this one. This is one that I personally really like.
My entire list is based by heart, by the way.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's
I'll
fair.
explain why I did that.
Well, and usually I give you shit about stuff like this, but I think in this
for
situation,
this
it's
show and
perfect.
this year, it warranted that.
And my number seven is going to make our good friend of the show, Adam Content, very happy as well, I think, because I'm actually taking us back to TNA wrestling.
Yeah.
And I'm taking us to specifically his, not so much the match, but the aftermatch of Sting with Bound for Glory.
This is great. I thought you were going to talk about his Impact debut.
No, that was terrible.
And I was going to shake because that was horrible.
Yeah. No,
but yes, this is fantastic.
To me, this was the last huge moment in Hogan's career.
This is one of his last matches, no? Like one
it
of
was
his last...
it's his top, it's in the final three matches of his career.
Yeah.
This was his last televised match.
Was it?
Okay. Yeah, this was his last televised match.
Oh yeah, because he did that stuff in Australia, right?
In the UK, I think. He did a couple six-mans in the UK. Australia was before. Yeah, Australia was before.
That
the Hulkamania
with
tour.
Umaga on it and stuff.
Yeah, that was before TNA. Which ATO just loves that tour, by the way.
Of course they do. Were they there?
No, remember when we interviewed ATO and they did not like that tour at all. It was not. They said it was very bad for Australian wrestling.
Oh, okay. I must
either
have
way,
blocked that part.
we mentioned it at the end. But this match was Sting at Bound for Glory. The storyline going in was pretty simple. Sting trying to get Hulk Hogan to be Hulk Hogan again. I know you're still in there. And the post match, he was getting beat down by like Bully Ray and Desmond Wolfe and Bischoff was in there. I can't remember who else. And I think Mr. Kennedy might have been in there. I don't know. And Sting's just getting beat down and he's just yelling, Hogan, help me, help me. And then Hulk just turns back the hands of time. And it was in Philadelphia, which was really helpful as well. And he starts doing the shake in and he rips his shirt and just for about 5 minutes, it was 1984 again, and Hulkamania was running wild. And I thought it was just really nice. And to me, that was the last really nice positive moment that Hogan got in the spotlight because it was shortly after that the comments came out, shortly after his WWE return. But it was nice to see Hogan get that moment again. So that's why it's the number seven.
Everything after here was kind of marked because he had a very brief return to WWE. Then he was kind of, after the comments came out, he was kind of erased. Like they took his name off the Hall of Fame for a period of time. He did just not exist. They for lack of a better term, they Chris Benoit him for a while.
Yeah.
And then even when they did bring him back, it was never the same. The crowd never reacted the same. The crowd never accepted him as their hero the way they used to. Everything changed after that. So you're right. This is one of the last times, you still had a stadium full of Hulkamaniacs wanting to see their hero thrive.
Yep.
This is a good number seven. I like it.
My number six, I'm going with the formation and the tag team of the Mega Powers.
This probably would have been my 4 or 3, but okay.
It couldn't be for me just because I think the other stuff is bigger.
This is just if I'm going just because I based my list on memory, like nostalgia, what was important to me growing up. This, man, the Mega Powers, as far as wrestling goes, it's probably my top 5 core childhood moments. Like what's important to your childhood from a wrestling standpoint? The Mega Powers is there, man. It's everything from their formation to their explosion to their phenomenal match at WrestleMania. Everything encompassed my childhood as a wrestling fan.
There is a video that myself and our former colleague Anthony did on the Classic Match Classroom where we broke down this entire feud. Yes. And it is phenomenal.
I really enjoy that episode, by the way. I remember watching that episode. I'm pretty sure avid listener, Rob, loved that episode as well.
Yeah, it was a fun one to do, and that whole story is covered there. But yeah, I mean, right from that first moment where Liv brings Hogan down in Saturday Night's Main Event, and his cheeks are puffing up, and he's like, "What's going on?" And he saves Macho from the Heart Foundation, all the way to the lust in your eyes and the breakup. It was just so well done.
I will correct you really quick that the woman in question right there was Liz, not
Sorry.
Liv.
I said Elizabeth.
You said Liv.
No, I said Elizabeth.
All right. I'll give the benefit of the doubt on that one.
I know who she is. She's a Hall of Famer and brother. But yeah, that one, I mean, in my opinion, that's got to be one of the upper echelon moments that we're going to talk about later for his rivalry. So I won't go too much into it now. So I'll go into my number five, which is I just have it down as the very first WrestleMania of all time.
Well, yeah, this has to be there. I do put the Mega Powers higher, but
I had it.
That's
originally until about
neither here nor there.
And until about 2 seconds ago, I had them flopped. I had the Mega Powers first, but then I really just started thinking about what WrestleMania is now.
But if your criteria for this list is based on importance and legacy, this could even be your number one.
100%. What WrestleMania is now is thank you to five men really. Vince McMahon, obviously, Hogan,
if
Mr.
you're going to
T.
talk about four men, and this is heartbreaking to say, but Mr. C is the only surviving member of that main event.
Yeah,
that came to my mind a couple of days ago, and that's just heartbreaking.
Do you know that now that Hogan has passed away, that the first main event in WrestleMania history where everybody is still alive is WrestleMania 12?
WrestleMania 12, isn't that nuts?
It's crazy.
Isn't that insane?
But yeah, this first WrestleMania, man, I know everyone's always like you can't do it without Piper, and Piper was a huge part of it. Same with Mr. Wonderful, but you got to take a look at the landscape of the world at this point. The two biggest stars in Hollywood at this point, not Hollywood, but like two of the biggest stars in the world were Hulk Hogan and Mr. T. Mr. T was over like Rover.
The A-Team was one of the biggest shows of the 80s. He was, anybody who didn't grow up in the 80s doesn't get Mr. T, and that's fine. Like you could look at Mr. T and be like, he was a huge star. Yes, he was. He was massive. How many, in this day and age, not just anybody gets an action figure. Mr. T had action figures because he was Mr. T. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to think about like a current star that's like that you could compare Mr. T with in star power, not like I'm trying to
because he was such a phenomenon. He was so because you can say why was he famous? Was he a good actor? No.
I would compare him, you know what star power I would compare him to, and only for like star power, when The Office was really humming, like Steve Carell, like their level of star power, not like because when The Office was one of the most popular shows on TV, Steve Carell was one of the most popular people in Hollywood, and the A-Team was, but Mr. T could eat Steve Carell, right? But I'm not talking about physical appearances.
At this point, it's a weird comparison for me because the confusion sets in where the confusion for me is Mr. T's popularity. I will never dispute his popularity.
Maybe
the confusion is why was he popular?
Because he'll pity that fool.
And I was a massive. My dad shows me pictures all the time of me dressed up like Mr. T. I had the chains. I had a bald wig with a fake mohawk. I had two Mr. T action figures. I loved Mr. T. Why?
I don't get it either.
I'll never know.
Guy was larger than life, but you bring him into professional wrestling.
Life. And when he entered the world of the WWF, and then bring in other people like David Mamet and Cyndi Lauper and all that, it explodes. You know what I mean? That it all started. We'll talk about this a little later. Spoiler alert. It all started on that episode of Piper's Pit.
Yeah.
And from there, that WrestleMania match became the antithesis of what we would see going forward for the next 42 years. If you're main eventing WrestleMania, except for WrestleMania 11, if you're WrestleMania, if you're main eventing WrestleMania, you are the biggest name in the business.
Yeah,
and it started right there.
It's not a well-kept secret. It's very public knowledge that if that first WrestleMania show flopped, then there probably would be no WWE right now.
There wouldn't be a WWE.
Vince put it all in there.
And here's what I'm gonna say, this might be a hot take, it might not be. Not only would there not be a WWE, I don't think there's professional wrestling. I think professional wrestling dies.
It looks a lot different, man.
I don't think WCW or NWA, I don't think they could have sustained. I don't think they could have gotten to where Vince McMahon got to. And I think it fizzles away and dies. I do.
That could be a different show for a different day altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get moving here because I know we still got another list to go to with you, and I don't want to be here all day. But number 4, I went with one of the biggest moments in professional wrestling history. I went with his heel turn with the NWO.
Yeah, I mean, again, so many of these things could have been your number 1.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have argued with you.
I think my top 4.
I'm not saying it should have been. I'm saying if you would have made this your number 1,
yeah, I think
no argument.
I think my top 4. You can say that about anything.
Yeah.
The NWO changed professional wrestling.
100%. It, everybody you can give credit to Vince McMahon and Steve Austin and Triple H and Shawn Michaels and all the, you can give credit to all those guys all you want for the birth of the Attitude Era. I personally think it started with the NWO, because without the NWO, the WWE doesn't need to up their game. They don't need to get edgier. They don't need, without the NWO doing what they're doing, they become this edgy, anti-establishment group. You don't need to go that route. And Vince McMahon was very famous for that. Unless he's pushed, he doesn't go those routes.
What's also very fascinating about the NWO run is you talk about the 2 big boom periods in professional wrestling. Well, who's front and center for both of them? Hulk Hogan.
100%. 100%. And I do think that Steve Austin was the face of that boom period for WWF. But 2 fucking years before they put the strap on Hogan, Austin, Hulk Hogan dropped that leg on Randy Savage. And that's what really started that new boom period.
100%.
Because before everybody was telling you to suck it, they were wearing NWO t-shirts.
Yeah, it rejuvenated Hogan's career, because Hogan's career was, I'm not going to say done, but it was, the red and yellow had run its course, brother.
It rejuvenated professional wrestling. For the first time in history, more people cared about WCW than they cared about WWF. There were people in my high school that never cared about wrestling wearing NWO t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't see that again until 1998, when all of a sudden it was cool to be a wrestling fan, and the most popular kids in my school are wearing Stone Cold Steve Austin 316 shirts.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated my life because it didn't make me any more popular, even though I was there from day one.
Moving on to the next one. It is the greatest live sporting event moment I have ever been to in my entire life. I have Hulk Hogan and The Rock at WrestleMania 18.
I had a feeling you were going to go with your heart, make this number 1.
I wanted to.
Have argued with you.
I wanted it. It was close.
The stare off alone makes your list. Forget the match. Forget the build up. Forget everything. Those 2 men standing in the middle of the ring, staring at each other, with the crowd going insane.
Mike,
that moment alone makes your list.
I have been to many events in my life, concerts, sporting events. I have been to many big sporting moments. The bat flip in Toronto with Jose Batista. I was there live for that.
You were there that night?
I was.
I didn't know that. No shit, eh?
There is nothing that, and I saw four of the last Tragically Hip concerts. I've seen the Rolling Stones. I've seen AC/DC. I've seen football games, basketball games, playoff games. I've been to a lot of sporting events, UFCs. There is nothing that comes even remotely close to the experience and the feeling that I had when Hulk Hogan started hulking up in that match with The Rock. And to vouch for that really quick,
Yeah.
one of my best friends and someone who's been on our show a couple times, Kerr from the he came with me, and Kerr is a diehard sports fan, and he's been all over the world to go, not over the world, all over North America to go see sporting events, and he also has a very similar mind frame on that as well. Hogan and The Rock, when he started hulking up, I cannot put into words.
I have two questions before we move on from this.
Mhm.
Number one, do you think you feel like that because you were only like 16 years old or 17 years old?
So
However
I
old
would
you
have been
were?
eight. I would have been 18 at that
Okay.
point.
Now, is there a difference between 18-year-old Tyler and 40-year-old Tyler? Do you think 40-year-old Tyler sitting in that crowd would feel the exact same?
I think 18-year-old Tyler was much more mature than 40-year-old Tyler.
I know a woman who named Victoria who would probably agree with you.
I I don't think my opinions would change on it because I still get those moments. They're a lot more rare now where I really like lose my
Yeah.
control. And I experienced that at AEW actually when Kenny Omega kicked out of the One Wing Angel at the count of one.
And I did when Cena turned heel at Elimination Chamber.
And I, yeah, seen it turning
Yeah.
heel. Another one. I think 40-year-old Tyler probably would have lost his mind even more
Okay.
than 18-year-old
That's fair.
Tyler because it just would have meant more to 40-year-old Tyler as well.
Sure.
18-year-old Tyler, I was like how you said earlier, it wasn't cool to cheer for Hogan. I didn't cheer for I wasn't a Rock guy. I was always a DX guy, so I never liked The Rock or the Nation
Yeah.
and all that stuff. But I wasn't 18-year-old Tyler was like, I love Chris Benoit and I love the technical wrestlers. I'm a
Yeah.
Kurt Angle guy. I'm a Triple H guy.
Yeah.
I'm a Chris Jericho guy. Chris Jericho's title run is being bare. I was like getting into my smarky
Sure.
phase at that
Yeah.
point.
I probably was around that time too. Yeah.
And 18-year-old Tyler was
That's
jumping
because
up and
you were watching a
down.
lot of ROH back then, weren't you?
I don't think ROH was alive at that time yet.
Weren't they?
No, they didn't come until a couple years later.
2002?
They didn't come until
Oh, it was more like 2004 they came
four.
around.
2004 was
Yeah,
ROH.
you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
That was probably me at my biggest smarky point. But
Yeah, exactly.
I was not for the NWO coming back to the WWE. I thought it was terrible. I hated it. And here I am jumping up and down and screaming at the top of my lungs for that moment.
That's how I felt. Unfortunately, I wasn't there that night, but that's how I felt when I have only seen Hogan live once in my life. And I've talked about this in the show before. It's the episode of Raw in Montreal where Sean did the swerve with Brett and all that stuff. When Hogan came out later that night, I said earlier, I'm not a Hulkamaniac. I never have been. But when you're in that crowd and you hear that Rick Derringer song and he comes out, you can't help it.
Yeah.
You turn into a 6-year-old kid.
You can't help it.
My second question before we move on regarding this. We have 5 months left of the John Cena retirement tour.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that John can do between now and December that can match Rock, Hogan, and 18?
No, absolutely not.
Is there anything?
No.
Is there any opponent they can put Cena against that can be that match?
Maybe maybe Austin.
Austin would. That was my first go-to.
I just think it's not a fair comparison to compare anything to Hogan and Rock at WrestleMania because it's widely considered one of the greatest WrestleMania matches and moments of all time.
We always say something can't be beaten, then it gets beat. We said for years that Bobby Heenan will always be the greatest manager of all time Well, guess what? He wasn't the greatest manager of all time on our list because now Paul Heyman has taken that spot. Everything can be beat. Everything, every number one can become a number two. What can beat this match?
I don't think we've met the superstars yet that are going to give us that moment.
And one last question before we move on. Why isn't Roman Reigns in that conversation?
I don't think.
Why have we not? When we're talking about the people leading this business and the people, we've mentioned a lot of names talking about people that are going to bring the business to the next level, and we haven't even discussed Roman Reigns. Why?
I think Roman Reigns falls into and it's not just Roman.
Is he the macho man of his era? Is he
no? He's just, it's different now because
warrior?
back then the WWE brand wasn't the draw, the superstars were. And now the WWE brand is the draw.
Well, and I'm hoping Triple H will eventually take that out of consideration because when Vince McMahon flat out said, I no longer want one man to be the face of this company. I want the company to be the face of this company. It was the dumbest thing he did as far as I'm concerned, because you don't fix what's not broken. When Hogan was the face of that company, it worked. When Austin was the face of that company, it worked. And all of a sudden, you don't want to face the company. Well, now there's a reason why there's no new boom period.
I mean, but we're in a different boom period now because you can argue that this is the most successful.
Wrestling isn't a boom period. I don't think WWE is in a boom period. I think wrestling is.
I think this is the most eyes that WWE's ever had on it. It's different. The world's just different now. So I don't think we're going to see a boom period like we've seen in the past. Like,
I don't think I agree with you with the most eyes. I think 98 to 2000 they had the most viewers in history. Like that was
their Netflix numbers blow those numbers away.
Do they really?
Yeah, their Netflix numbers are huge.
Okay.
I'll
have to take your word for that because I haven't done the research.
Being on Netflix is a huge game changer for the WWE. Mainstream wise, I think the WWE is the most accepted that it's ever been before.
Okay.
Right. I think it's less embarrassing to be a wrestling fan right now because even during the boom periods, you get your friends to watch wrestling and then or like that it's always the poor timing where you get like the one guy who you want to be a wrestling fan or your parents will come in and it's like Mae Young giving birth to a hand.
Right.
Like it's not as embarrassing to be a wrestling fan right now.
All right, let's blow through your list so I can speed through mine.
Yes, we have number 2, beating the Iron Sheik and the birth of Hulkamania. I mean, pretty self-explanatory, and I'm just gonna roll right into my number 1. And
that's good because we'll probably talk about that Sheik thing in a few minutes.
Yeah, and then number 1 is slamming Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3.
And when I said that this list was probably predictable, that's the first thing I thought of because I don't think anybody not.
It's one of the most iconic moments in the history of wrestling. Do you want any honorable mentions, or do you want to just move on?
Speed through them if you have a couple.
WCW debut. Winning the world title against Triple H.
I hated it. Oh, those are two different moments.
Yes,
I'm like, he did not beat Triple H on his WCW debut.
No,
you threw me off. Can I tell you though, as a fan back in the day, I was so angry when
me too. Oh God, I lost my mind. I lost my mind.
Good. Yeah.
WCW debut, winning title Triple H, winning the tag titles with Edge was really fun.
Yeah.
Being the first ever IWGP champion in Japan. His run in Japan is a whole different story. That was fantastic stuff. And then I just put Hall of Fame / WrestleMania 21. I thought that was a fun little flow.
Yeah. Okay.
So what we're gonna do? We're gonna throw it to your list now. I'm gonna put in comments right now from Dory Funk Jr., Jacques Rougeau, and Kurt Angle, all talking about moments with Hulk Hogan. Dory talks about how he enjoyed working with Hogan. Kurt Angle mentions
great again. I'm sorry to keep plugging our own show, but if you haven't listened, go back to that conversation with Dory. Mm-hmm. That whole conversation is just such a learning moment. I love that talk.
The Kurt Angle one is really cool. It's because we asked him what his favorite career moment was, or moment that makes him smile, and he was talking about beating The Rock, and segued into his Mount Rushmore of most important entertainers of all time. So I thought that was kind of neat. And then Jacques Rougeau, Hulk Hogan famously putting Jacques Rougeau over in the Montreal Forum, and Jacques going to break all that down for you right now. I'm going to come back on the other side, and Mike's going to count down Hulk Hogan's top 7 greatest rivals.
That's good.
You got to work with your brother, and you guys got to work with Hulk Hogan around that time. How fun was it being in the ring with the Hulkster, especially with how into it the crowd was at that time? That must have been a lot of fun being in there with him during that time period.
Hulkster was a privilege to be in the ring with, and that's the case in professional wrestling. Everywhere you go, as we say in the business, the more over somebody is, the better matches you have. The better matches you have, the more people pay to see you. The more people that pay, the bigger the crowds. So, the skill of the opponent is something I love about the business. And great workers, and that's using the language of the business. The great workers only get there because they understand not only the wrestling business, but they understand life itself.
That was my favorite title win, and it's because it was The Rock. And we all know that how talented he is. He's a great athlete, and obviously he's great at cutting promos and has a great look. But the only reason why I don't put Rock up there as one of the greatest of all time, he's the greatest. He's one of the greatest superstars of all time. I can't say greatest wrestler of all time because he wasn't a technician like Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, even Undertaker is, or Shawn Michaels. I put Rock up there, like him and Ric Flair and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Hulk Hogan are the greatest superstars of all time. They're legends in their own right.
Perhaps maybe your greatest singles match in Montreal might have been a couple years later against Hollywood Hogan. That was a big night as well. You didn't see Hogan doing a lot of clean losses at that time. How did this all come to be? Is this I've heard stories that Hulk really is respectful of the people in their hometowns and really likes to give them that extra push in their hometown. Did being in Montreal have something big to do with you and Hulk doing business together there?
I think it was a combination of a few things. I was always a professional. I was there for 10 years opening shows for Hulk many times. And a lot of people don't know this, but they always think the main event is the most important match of the night, but it's not. The most important match of the night is the first one. Because if you go out and you have a great first match, people are into it. So it just builds. But if you put your first match out there and it's a shitty match, people don't believe in what they saw, then it takes 2 or 3 matches for them. So I think Hulk had respect for everything we've done in 10 years. I also think that the fact that I stopped the bullying with the Bulldog, because he lost a lot of friends, Hulk, that were bullied by the Bulldog and just quit the business. And he was afraid too. He never said it, but everybody was afraid of the Bulldogs because they were on drugs and substances and steroids and drinking and all this mixed. They were pretty loud plus obnoxious. So I think in somewhere Hulk was protected because he was the icon and everything. The Bulldogs never messed with him, but I still think that he was hoping that his day would never come. So when I stopped the bullying, it completely stopped. And he knew what it took. So when I had my match in Montreal, and plus I was the one who brought WCW to Montreal. My lawyer, Cookie Lazarus, he put $250,000 up to get the publicity, to rent the Molson Center, the whole building, and he was all behind. He got a TV deal for TBS, for WCW in Montreal. It was our first, and then we were opening the first show. So Eric Bischoff and was the boss of WCW. But Hulk was the boss. You know what I mean? Yeah. There was 2 bosses there. Like there was one boss, but Hulk, he knew he was he was the man. NWO, he was at the prime of his career with Razor Ramon and Diesel and all that. They were really hot with the NWO. So I think that there was an ego thing between them two, and I thought there was a little problem between them. So I just came in and I offered to Hulk. I said, "Hey, Hulk," I said, "I have an opportunity to get you guys on TV. I have an opportunity to bring you into Montreal, which WWF had the exclusivity, and it was a little bit of a vengeance for me too. And I said, the only thing I'm asking, I'd like to work with you. You know, I wanted to be the legend, the match of the legends, the Quebec legend against the world legend. You know, and he says, "Yep, I'll do it." When he said yes, I freaked out. And then when we got to Montreal, he got into the dressing room in front of everybody, all the boys, the Harlem Heat, Ric Flair, Dean Malenko, all the guys, the big guys were there, and he says, "Okay, boss, what are we doing tonight?" He says that to me. You know, I'm looking at him like, that's funny. You know, that's really funny. And then everybody was laughing too. And then he says, "I'm not kidding, brother. It's your show." He said, "What are we doing?" He says, "How do you want to beat me?"
Wow.
And then I went like, "You're very funny, Hulk. You're very, very funny. I got to give it to you. You're very funny." He said, "I'm serious, brother." I said, "Okay." I said, "You're serious?" He says, "I'm serious, brother." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, why don't you beat me up the whole match and I'll just small package you at the end." I want him to look so good. And that came upon that. And I remember after that match, we were in the dressing room. When I came back out of the match, I just got the win, the clean pinfall on him. No gimmicks, no nothing. There were no ropes, no manager, no nothing. And I got back in the dressing room, and there was none of the boys left in the dressing room. They were all gone. Like they didn't want to see it, you know, they didn't want to see me because a lot of guys wanted to beat Hulk before me, you know, and they didn't have the chance. So it was like, I guess that's what it was. So anyway, I'm standing in front of the mirror in the dressing room, and then I'm a little swollen up a bit. We had a little rugged match. I think he must have changed his mind when he came out, because when I came out, I had 99% of the people booing me in my hometown. I didn't expect that. That went over my head. And then when he came out, NWO and everything, it was a riot. So I'm sure when he was getting all this ovation and stuff, he was probably saying, "What the hell did I do to say that I was going to get beat by this jabroni?" You know. But anyway, so the match is pretty rough. And then when I got in front of the dressing room, I'm looking at the mirror like this, and he walks in, and he comes in, and he says, "You okay, brother?" And I looked at him and says, "Yeah." "You okay?" He says, "Yes, sir." So he turns around to walk out. I said, "Hey, Hulk." And then he turns back around and says, "Why'd you do that?" He says, he thought maybe I was thinking about being stiff a bit. But I say, I wasn't talking about that at all. I said, "Why'd you do that?" He looks at me, he says, "Eddie Auger, Johnny and Jacques Rougeau, Raymond, Jacques Armand Rougeau." He says, "Everything that the Rougeau brothers and the Rougeau family did in Montreal," he says, "that's why I did it."
Wow.
And what a great man. But I also then remember Jimmy Hart coming right after. He just came right after Hulk left, and he says, "Jacques," he says, "it's not true." He says, "Because what you did to the Bulldog." But Jimmy Hart told me that, you know, and not Hulk. But it was like, so there's a mix of a lot of reasons, I think, of coincidence, timing, him being pissed off at Bischoff or whatever it was. There was a bunch of things, a bunch of factors that made it that my notoriety went from here to just like that. So every time I was doing a promo, every time I do a conference, and everywhere, I always brought the footage of where I beat Hulk Hogan, the biggest icon of wrestling. So
100%.
so I used it, and I overused it because it was such a great thing that happened to me.
That's incredible.
All right, so I do have the top 7 rivals in the history of Hulk Hogan's career. I'm going to break this down. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I told you before, I did do this by the heart, and I based it on nostalgia and the things that were important to my childhood and the things that I remember growing up. So, for example, when I hit my number 7, my number 7 may be his most important rival to his career, but because of where it fell in his career, it didn't affect my childhood as much. Then that's why it's my number 7, but it still has to be on the list.
Fair.
So we're going to start that with my number 7, and that's Nick Bockwinkel.
Okay. I did not have Bockwinkel even in consideration for mine. No.
So Bockwinkel, I think, has to be talked about because I don't think you get Hulkamania without this feud. I don't think Vince McMahon, like, sure, the Thunder Lips thing was important. Like Vince was paying attention and saw him in Rocky and stuff like that. But I don't think Vince McMahon cares that much without him becoming one of the biggest stars in AWA. Vern Gagne, I'll never say an ill word about Vern, but Vern didn't know what the fuck he had. Vern, for some reason, just thought that Nick Bockwinkel was going to be the face of his company and should be the face of his company and push Nick. But from 82 to 83, these two had a phenomenal feud where Hulk just kept coming up on the losing end. And then there was, near the end of that, there was a big match where Hogan did win. And then something happened. I can't remember.
Yeah, they did a bunch of dusty finishes. They did a big dusty finish,
and the match got restarted and stuff like that. And Hogan didn't win the title. I consider that to be one of the downfalls of AWA. That's where the fans started to turn on AWA. Fans rejected the fact that Hulk Hogan wouldn't be their champion. Hulk left shortly after that, went to WWF.
I'll tell you what though.
Started the boom period.
I'll tell you what though. I don't think it would have mattered if they put the belt on Hogan or not. That guy would have left. He would have left for New York.
You think Hogan was going WWF no matter what?
Not a doubt in my mind. He would have left. Yeah. It's probably a blessing in hindsight that they didn't put the belt on him because he would have left with the belt.
Okay.
100% he would have.
Okay. But I do think that is an important feud to talk about because
I love it. I love it for sure. I love Bockwinkel.
Because I think without that feud, the world doesn't get to see how big of a star Hulk Hogan is going to be.
That's the first time we got to see that version of Hulk Hogan. Like the Hulkamania. Hulkamania was like the training wheels.
And he's hot off being Thunder Lips.
That was like Hulk Hogan figuring out what Hulkamania was as well.
Yeah. My number 6. If you want, I can let you tell everyone who my number 6 is, but is your microphone going to handle it?
But still,
my number 6 is the man called Sting.
This has to be on here, not only for it's just too bad that the execution of Starrcade 96 wasn't better.
That's definitely in my list.
Because
everybody talks about the downfall of WCW and where it happened, and a lot of people talk about the finger poke of doom.
No, this is where it started.
Starrcade 97 was kind of where it started.
Yeah,
and I want to talk about this in full in a few weeks from now because I'm working on not a list but a show that I want to do with you where I want to rebook the entire career of Bret Hart in WCW. It's something very interesting to me of what they did with Bret in WCW, why it was such a failure and how it could have not have been.
Wait, they did stuff with Bret Hart in WCW?
I want to talk about that in a couple of weeks from now. But this is where, he just came in, they're debuting Bret Hart. They have him as the special guest referee, and then they fuck up the finish.
Well, Bret wasn't even supposed to be in this match. Bret refereed Bischoff and Zbyszko.
Right.
Which made this even more confusing clusterfuck.
Now,
but you know what?
The blame largely goes to Nick Patterson.
Patrick. No,
Nick
the
Patrick
blame
for this.
The blame recently has shifted to Sting on this.
Well, wasn't it because Nick was supposed to do a fast count and he didn't?
Yeah, apparently Hogan told him not to. That's the Iggy.
I never heard that.
That's the Iggy that Hogan said not to. But the real blame lately has fallen on Sting for this because apparently he didn't show up in great shape for this match. And Hogan made the audible in the back. That doesn't work for me, brother. We can't.
Oh, fuck.
We can't if he's not ready to go. We can't put the rocket to him, which is terrible because like Sting hadn't wrestled in a year, so obviously his cardio wasn't going to be there.
Just do business.
But I mean, they ended up putting the belt on him in February anyways. So stupid.
But the reason it's on my list is not this moment.
No, it's the build.
It's everything else from 96 to 99. Sting. This is your number one. This is what I love about professional wrestling. This is your basic good versus evil storyline. This is what wrestling is about. This is what Hogan was about for years.
Mhm.
Good versus evil. Except this time, Hogan's on the evil end. Sting symbolized honor and resistance in WCW. He stood for everything that WCW was, is, and could be. Where Hogan, at this point, Hogan symbolized ego, betrayal, and the destruction of tradition. What a great story to put these guys together. If the I think this would probably be in my top three if the execution was better. You know?
Yeah,
But
I mean,
but
this was the birth of.
As far as somebody in WCW to go up against Hulk Hogan and fight for the honor of WCW, Sting was the right man to choose.
This was also the storyline that gave us the birth of Crow Sting.
Yes.
As well, which is another
which
that
I would, one of the most iconic characters in wrestling history.
I would love to do a deep dive on Crow Sting someday as well.
Yes.
All right, let's keep banging these out.
My number 5, Hatsui.
Shiki makes your list, eh?
I'm going for the Shiki baby.
Shiki never made my list.
Come on, Bubba.
No,
no
Bubba.
Shiki baby for your list.
No Shiki, Bubba.
You're a jabroni.
Other than having a raging hard on for his title match with Hulk Hogan, where Hogan wins the belt.
Listen, it wasn't a long feud, but I consider it one of the most important feuds of Hogan's career.
I would say it's one of the most. It's on my list. I would say it's one of the most important matches of Hogan's career, but they didn't really feud. They didn't do much after.
So, just to give some background to our younger fans, we're going to have to go all the way back to 1983. I mentioned before that when I was born, the champion was Bob Backlund, and until then, Backlund. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Historian. But Backlund, I believe, was the longest champion in WWE history at that point.
No, Bruno. Bruno's always.
Was it Bruno?
Yeah, Backlund's the second longest reigning champion.
Okay. Oh, he was the second longest. Okay. So Backlund ended up losing. Vince had just bought the company from his dad, by the way. And Vince knows he needs to go in a different direction. Backlund is probably the hottest babyface in the world at this point. And he says, okay, other than maybe Dusty in the other company.
Yeah. Backlund was I would that's I would say they're the big two. And the Von Erichs, of course.
Yeah, of course. And then but he's got to go in a different direction. He doesn't know what to do, so he puts the title on the Iron Sheik.
Wow. There was strategy behind all this, right?
Yes. Move forward, you have the incredible Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan comes in. He becomes the very first man in history to get out of the camel clutch, which at this point is huge. This is massive. It's not like today where everybody kicks out of every fucking finisher. You kicked out of a finisher, you broke out of a signature hold. That was massive back then. So for him to break out of the camel clutch is mind blowing. And of course, he becomes the WWF champion. And I believe this match is where Vince McMahon's WWF that we know and love. That's where it started.
This is it. The birth of Hulkamania, January 23rd, 1984.
So I'm not sure what two matches I didn't, or what two rivals I didn't put on my list that you did, but I'm surprised that this isn't on there because I find it so extremely important and memorable. I grew up remembering his match, his stuff with Shiki.
Yeah, I remember the match, but I don't they didn't really do a feud at all. He kind of just came in, saved Backlund from the Wild Samoans, and beat Sheik and moved on and had his run.
My number 4, you already touched on very briefly. We'll try to speed through it, but my number 4, of course, is his partner in the Mega Powers, Mr. Randy Savage.
See, to me, I have this one in my top 2 or 3.
Okay.
You could, again, it's the same thing with my list. You could argue this could be number 1.
Yeah.
Right. I would maybe put this as my number 1. I think it's his most famous feud of all time.
Okay. Again, I went by heart here.
Yeah, so, going by heart. Yeah. Well, I know who your number 1's going to be. I knew your number was going to be the second that you did it. Your number 1 is my number 3.
Until 1987, there was no hotter heel than Randy Savage. Randy Savage was the heel of WWF. What, could I be corrected here?
Yeah, I would say he had a solid 2 to 3 year run as being one of the top heels for sure.
Yeah. And then, of course, so 19, what was it, 1987? Yeah, 1987, when the Mega Powers they get together.
I think it's 88.
Yeah, you could be either 88, late 87, early 88. They get together, and they got together in 87 because Macho won the title in 88.
Okay.
Macho goes to WrestleMania 4 to win the title, and that's where there's already seeds of deception, there's already seeds of jealousy, but now Macho's the champion, so shouldn't he be the star of this tag team?
That doesn't work for me, brother.
Doesn't work for me, brother. Hulk Hogan is still the star, and it works so well because now the jealousy is 10 times bigger. I'm the champion. I'm the man. I'm everything. Why is he still Mr. Why am I number 2 to him? Why? And even my wife looks at him with lust in her eyes.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was such an amazing turn that I still remember to this day. Watching the seeds of deception slowly, and we've talked about this 1,000 times. I'm a big mark for slow builds for long-term storylines, and that was what this was. By the time they reached WrestleMania 4 or WrestleMania 5, it pretty much probably still goes down as one of my favorite WrestleMania main events.
Great one. Another one where, like I said, with Warrior, your two biggest stars going at it. You don't know who's going to win. I think they should have put Savage over personally, but I mean that's just hot quarterback booking. But I mean also this is also where Hogan, I would say in between WrestleMania 5 going into WrestleMania 6, I think is when the fans were kind of like, I think this Hulkamania thing, it was starting to change.
Yes,
it wasn't, people were really rallying behind the Warrior after this, and I think people were ready for. They had seen Hogan pose for long enough because it's been 5 years by this point. Right?
Well, if you believe Hogan, which is, you always take a grain of salt here. The story goes that he wanted to do the heel turn for WrestleMania 6. He wanted to go by the name Triple H. Apparently, Hollywood Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 6.
Yeah, Vince hard no.
And Vince was a hard no.
Which I agree with. That's not the time to do that either.
It obviously worked later on. Only 6 years later?
Yeah.
But those are 6 years. Those are 6 years of, 6 years is a long time sometimes.
So Macho's your number 3.
No, Macho was my number 4.
Number 4, okay.
Yes, sir.
It's number 3.
Where are you Number 3 is the man who has a very important question to ask you. Would anybody like a peanut?
Andre, eh?
Andre is my number 3.
Yeah.
You want to talk about beloved childhood memories? You don't go farther
Piper's Pit, man.
Than that Piper's Pit thing. And people need to know the background on this. The fact that Andre was the most beloved babyface in professional wrestling through the 70s and the 80s. Like you don't get bigger, no pun intended, than Andre the Giant when it comes to beloved, heroes. He had never turned heel as far as I remember until this point. Then we get to here, and he shows up on Piper's Pit with Bobby fucking Heenan, and the infamous moment where he rips off the cross from Hogan's chest, inadvertently scratching him with his nail, which wasn't supposed to happen, but makes such an amazing visual. So now he's bleeding from
Piper's line. You're bleeding.
Yeah,
so simple and so powerful.
It set up the entire main event for WrestleMania 3, and it all started because Andre said, we've been friends for years, and they've been doing this throughout the first bit of Hogan's title reign. Him and Andre had teamed up a couple times, and they were always displayed as friends. And then he says, "You have no respect for me. You've never offered me a title match. You're selfish."
Simple and effective.
And that Bobby Heenan's the one who kind of got into his brain and fed this stuff to him, and it all worked out. And then the match at WrestleMania 3, you already alluded to as your number 1. in the match careers is one of the biggest moments in the history of professional wrestling. It wasn't, and then they feuded quite a bit after this, but nothing matches that match at WrestleMania 1.
I am so curious which one of my guys you left off the list, because you missed
I left two off, apparently.
I could give you Bockwinkel, because like I was going back and forth between Bockwinkel, Flair, and Vince. So like you put one in there, I'm okay with all of them.
Sure. My number 2, how could it not be, baby? My number 2 is my man, Roddy Piper.
This is your number 2?
Yes, sir.
I thought this would be your number 1.
Yeah, no. My number 1 is my number 1, has always been my number 1. But my number 2 is the Rowdy one.
If Hulk Hogan is Batman, Rowdy Piper is his Joker.
100%. We've already alluded to this, you don't get what we have now without this main event. 1984, I don't think there was a hotter segment outside of the ring, other than the in-ring product. There was no hotter segment in professional wrestling than the Piper's Pit. You had to tune into Piper's Pit in 84. You had to. And when he took Piper's Pit and used it to mock Hogan, to mock Cyndi Lauper, it set up the biggest match and biggest event of all time. And you go from there. Before we even get there, you have the war to settle the score, which is just a clusterfuck of awesomeness. Anybody who hasn't seen that, please go back, because that sets up the WrestleMania main event as well, because Mr. T gets involved and all that. But then you go years later, after WrestleMania 1, Mr. Roddy Piper never let Hulk Hogan remember or forget. You never beat me clean. You've never pinned me. It doesn't matter if you won WrestleMania 1. That wasn't my fault. That was Orndorff's fault. That wasn't me. He never let him forget that. And they moved it on out of that company into WCW, which we won't talk about.
Terrible feud, but then they rekindle again in WWE.
And then they came back in WWE. It is my favorite feud that Hogan ever had. And I know I'm biased because I love Roddy, but it is the most important feud I think he ever had, because we don't get where we are without it.
All right. I'm curious to know. I need to know your number 1. I'm dying here.
My number 1, I don't think any man in history hated Hulk Hogan more than this man. My number 1 is Bobby the Brain Heenan.
Yeah, fair.
Think about this. He did everything for 20 years. He did everything in his power to try to stop Hulkamania. He threw out, I'm just going to list off a couple of names that I wrote down, and I probably forgot a bunch. Just a couple of names that he tried to pin up against Hulk Hogan to destroy Hulk Hogan. Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy, Paul Orndorff, Harley Race, Andre the Giant, Rick Rude, Ric Flair. None of them got the job done. But, I don't think anybody in professional wrestling history was, consistently for 20 years kept his eyes on Hulk Hogan and never wavered. And then what makes it what shifts it from my number 2 to my number 1, he brings it to a whole new company. Hogan shows up in 94 to WCW. Bobby's already there, and he doesn't play kayfabe. He doesn't, pretend that he doesn't know Hogan because it's a different company. I know Hogan, and fuck Hogan. Right up until and you brought right up until the NWO thing, where he comes out and everybody's thinking he's the big hero, and he's going, well, whose side is he on? Because he still doesn't trust Hulk Hogan.
Everybody, and then it's funny because, like a true heel, the heel's usually always right.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think anybody tried more consistently for as long as he did to try to beat Hulk Hogan or to destroy Hulkamania than Bobby Heenan. And that's why he's my number 1.
Fair. Okay, you missed like a top 3 for me, and I need to know why.
Okay. I've got a small 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got a 5-person honorable mention list.
Give me your honorable mention. Let's see if they're in there.
Sergeant Slaughter,
No.
Ric Flair, Vince McMahon, The Rock, DDP.
Not even an honorable mention.
Who is it?
You mentioned this guy. You mentioned this guy's name like 3 times.
Warrior?
Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff.
Okay.
Dude,
I almost feel like
they had
Piper was the face of that whole thing for me. So,
but did you forget about the Orndorff heel turn after that? Like, did you forget about their friendship? Like Hogan and Orndorff.
Maybe it was a misstep here, but I don't know.
So after WrestleMania 1, Orndorff turns face, right? And him and Hulk Hogan become best friends.
Yeah.
They're training buddies, they're tag team partners, and Mr. Wonderful gets jealous of Hogan's popularity, and they have some miscommunications over some things. So Orndorff wants to go for the tag titles. I can't remember the exact storyline. And then Orndorff drops Hogan with a pile driver during a tag match against Bundy and Studd. Massive heel turn. Exhibition Stadium in Toronto. Like, this should have been the main event of this would have been the main event of WrestleMania 3 if Andre couldn't go.
Yeah.
This is one of Hulk Hogan. They had the cage match with a double drop at the same time on Saturday night's main event.
Right.
Orndorff had mega heat. He was the top heel for that period of time. He was probably Hulk Hogan's most the guy that he drew the most money with on the loops.
I will justify this just by saying, because I went by the heart, that's why I didn't go on my list.
This is like a top. This one's a top 3 for me.
Because I look at my list and say, who do I knock off for this?
Sheik.
I guess
See you later.
Be Bockwinkel.
Sheik.
But you knock off Sheik, eh?
I get rid of Sheik because he wasn't a rival. He was just a match.
Yeah, all right. I'll concede to that.
I gotta have Mr. Wonderful. I'll die on the hill.
Yeah, you didn't fight me on Heenan, so.
Oh, I love Heenan. Heenan could be like, it's the same thing like we talked about at the other list. It's either 1, 2, 3. You could interchange them all.
Heenan, Piper, or Andre all could have been number 1.
100%.
Yeah.
The Hogan formula.
Hell, even Savage. My full top 4 could have been number 1.
100%, and that just goes to show the legacy of Hulk Hogan. And
who was the other person you had on your list that I didn't have?
I didn't fill my 7th spot. I just kind of rotate. Vince or Flair, like
Vince or Flair. Okay.
I mean, they didn't. Flair and Hogan just never got on the same page on a big company.
I was fighting between Vince and Bockwinkel. Bockwinkel because he was so important to the evolution and what would become Hulkamania, and Vince because that feud that they did have around 2002 era,
3.
That even though it didn't last that long, it was so personal and so
well. And then they went into the Mr. America stuff after too, right? Which is fun.
And even though it's kind of goofy, but it's fun. But that I don't think enough people remember how awesome the WrestleMania 19 stuff was.
I would probably give the nod to Vince over Bockwinkel personally.
Right. And as far as Flair goes, I saw a couple of other lists, and Flair made a lot of people's lists.
I didn't like their
Flair,
WCW run.
They dropped the ball. They dropped the ball on Flair and WWE. They didn't pull. It's not that they dropped the ball. They just didn't pull the trigger on the WWE stuff. And then by the time they got to WCW, it was too late. It really was. That feud was done. They couldn't have revived it, especially with Hogan winning the title on day 1. That just squashed everything as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and Hogan came in and beat Flair 3 straight pay-per-views, right?
Yeah.
Retired on it was. Yeah, I just think too little, too late on that one. WrestleMania 8, that was the perfect time to do it.
WrestleMania is where it should have happened. Listen, am I upset it didn't because we got that great match between Rick and Randy? I don't know. Would it have been the bigger main event? Of course it would have. It would have been one of the biggest main events in the world. For them to base, I find it very strange and dumb that they based it all on house show reactions.
Yeah. I mean, that was the business back then, though.
Yeah.
Right. But they also were in Oakland where Flair never was a draw. Like Flair never wrestled in Oakland, right?
Yeah. But if we don't get that, we never get, if we do get that, we never get the, she was mine before she was yours.
Great stuff.
And I do love that story. So
it is great stuff.
God, I love WrestleMania 8.
Well, that's it, man. That's gonna put a boa, if you will, on the legacy and the career of Hulk Hogan.
Now before we say goodbye, I did make a promise. I told my son that we were doing a Hulk Hogan show today. He doesn't know why we're doing a Hulk Hogan show, but he knows we're doing a Hulk Hogan show. So he made me, right before I clicked the link here, he brought in these and made me promise that they would go on the show today.
Hey,
so these are two
WCW and WWE
Hulks. Yeah. So and he asked me very recently. He asked me for his birthday. He wants a Hollywood Hulk Hogan because he doesn't have one. Yeah. So I think that's what I'll have to do.
Well, I guess the real question left is what you gonna do? You gonna subscribe to Count It Out? You gonna next week too, Mike? We're gonna do we'll talk all about SummerSlam, what happened this weekend, and we're gonna do your idea if you still want to do it.
I do. I got to start working on it.
Much like we did with WrestleMania. Much like we did with WrestleMania, we're gonna go through every SummerSlam and pick what we think our favorite matches. So we'll do that next. We'll do that next week. That'll be our SummerSlam recap show. No list. We won't do a list next week. We'll do that instead. How's that sound?
That was always the plan for next week's show. This week's show was supposed to be the greatest intercontinental matches to have, intercontinental championship matches to happen at SummerSlam, but life and death happens. So this was a more important show to do, and I'll save that list for next year's WrestleMania SummerSlam show.
There you go. There you go.
But next week we will do the greatest matches to ever happen of the greatest match of every single SummerSlam card. Very much like we did for WrestleMania.
Perfect. And we'll give a full recap as well.
So before we say goodbye, let's get one of these.
You know, I do that in Barry Wrestling at every show. when right before we do like go live or whatever for the recordings, Diamond Jim and I will stand in the ring and Jim will hype up the crowd. Because we want it to be when they start recording, everyone's on their feet cheering, right? So Jim will run down the card, and then we play this awesome video package that Mike Jeffries does every. He's phenomenal, and they get better and better every time. That's all I'm putting you over, okay? That's it. But and then as that's done, everybody gets up on their feet, and Jim's walking around, get up, and I'm in the ring doing this, and then I'll go to each corner and I'll do the Hogan, and I'm like, all right. So maybe this weekend at Camping Fest I'll throw a Hogan must pose in there. I doubt that, but I would definitely be excited for that.
Well, we didn't need a third man for this show, but Hogan will always be the third man in our hearts. Thank you, Hulk Hogan, for everything you've done for professional wrestling. Thank you for our childhood. And before we go, let's give out one more shout out to somebody else, because I don't know if you hit it on it last week, but we did lose another WWE Hall of Famer very recently in the one and only Ozzy Osbourne. As much as Hogan was a huge part of my childhood, so was Ozzy. I'm a huge music mark, and Ozzy was a massive part of my upbringing. So to lose Ozzy and Hogan in the span of a week was devastating. And then you throw Theo Huxtable in there, and
that's a rough week.
What a rough week for 80s kids.
I got to see Black Sabbath in concert. They were really cool.
Love me some Ozzy, and go back and watch Ozzy with the British Bulldogs. It's some really cool stuff.
Absolutely.
Until next week, my friends. Stay tuned for our SummerSlam show. Enjoy all the great. Thank you to all the great interviews we've done in the past, who we clipped here today. We couldn't do the show without all you people. Until then, you've been counted out.
But whose side are you on?